Okay, so what we're going to do here is first we are going to get rid of this round stone because we don't need it. So we're going to add in a stone that we do need. I'm going to delete this stone first. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add in a new collection. And I'm going to call this new collection, we're going to name it Gemstones. And in that new collection, I'm going to come over to, let's see, Jewelcraft, wherever it is, right here. And we're going to add in a new stone. We're going to make this a 7mm emerald cut stone. And we're going to select the emerald cut right here. I'm also going to select the emerald there. That'll texture it in green, and we'll hit OK. And now we have that stone in place. So that's one stone. Next thing I want to do is add in my Marquis, which is a 3.5 by 1.5. So we're going to go and add another gem. I'm going to select the Marquis. I'm going to make that 3.5mm. And that's also going to be a diamond. So we will select diamond on the list. And I will hit OK. And there's our diamond. And we also have a round stone. Those are going to be about 1.1 or 1.2mm. So I'll add that last one in. And we'll do 1.2mm. I'm going to select round. And that is a diamond. We'll hit that. Okay, so all three of our gemstones are on our screen. And those here we're going to just hide right now by clicking the little eyeball, and they're gone. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is create the head for our ring shank. I'm going to create a new collection, and I'm going to call this collection number 4. We'll change the name to ring parts. Okay, and with ring parts selected, I can go ahead and start adding in all the tools that I'll be using in this particular tutorial on how to make the ring. The first thing we're going to do is add in a circle, and I will hit Shift A. I'm going to come over to curve, and we're going to come up to circle, and I'm going to size that up. We're going to hit our little items tab right here, and I'm going to rotate that on the x-axis, RX90, so that it is vertical. And I'm going to size that up to approximately 17.5. Actually, we're going to make this 17.8mm by 17.8mm in circumference. Okay, that is going to be the circle we'll use to model our ring shank. The upper gallery will also be made from a circle, so I'm going to duplicate this, Shift D, and press Enter. And then I am going to enter edit mode by pressing the tab key. I'm going to grab this particular vertex up here, and I'm just going to make that a little bit taller, just about like that. So far, so good. I'm going to go back into object mode by pressing the tab key. And I didn't turn on screencast keys, so I will do that now, so that every time I press a key, it shows up in the lower right corner. The next thing I want to do is build the head for the emerald. So I'm going to bring back the emerald. I'm just going to bring back my stones. We'll hide the Marquis and the round diamond for now. And there is the stone that we're going to use. So I need to make a head for this. It's very simple. So I'm going to add in a mesh. I'm going to do Shift A. We're going to come over to Mesh, Add, and I'm going to add in a cube. With that selected, I'm going to size this to be just a little bit larger than the stone itself. So I'm going to hit S, Y, and I'm going to size that out to be just a little bit wider than our stone, just about like that. And then S, X, and then I will make it a little wider than the stone there. Now, it doesn't have to be this wide or this deep because we don't need as much depth in that since it is going to sit on the upper gallery here. So I'm going to size that just a little bit along the Z axis. So I'm going to hit S, Z, and then I'm going to size that down ever so slightly to about there. Okay, that looks exactly how I want it to sit in the stone. I might want to lower that just a little bit because I will have prongs sitting here, and what I need to do now is make a cutout for this. Let's make that a little bit smaller. SZ. Okay, so just like that. If I look at this from the top down, S, Shift Z, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger, just about like that. That looks good. I like the way that looks right there. Okay, I'm going to press Control A and apply the rotation and scale to this particular cube that we added. I'm also going to change the name. We're going to call this, we'll call this Emerald Head. Okay, so with that done, now I need to make some changes to this, and how I want to make the changes is I want a little bit of a rounded corner on all four corners of this particular item. So I'm going to come over to Edit Mode, pressing the Tab key. I'm going to select the Edge Select tool right here, and then I'm going to just click, hold the Shift key down after I've selected one of the edges, hold the Shift key down and select all four of the edges together so that they're all highlighted now. With that done, I can press Control B and move my mouse back to apply a beveled edge to this, and I'll use my mouse wheel to round it up, just like so. That looks good so far. Okay, with that done, now I can go and select my face tool, and I want this particular face down here to be just a little bit smaller on the X and Y axis. So I'll hit S, Shift Z, and I'll just size that in a little bit so that it gives us a nice taper. Okay, now that's done. I'm going to hide our emerald one more time. I've got the bottom face selected with the face tool, so I'm going to hold the Shift key down and select the top face. With that done, I'm going to come over here to my menu options right here, and under Face, in Edit Mode, I'm going to Poke Faces. Okay, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm going to hit the Tab key to go back into Object Mode. We're going to bring our emerald back in. That looks good so far. I'm going to drop this emerald down just a little bit so it sits just about like that. I want the girdle of the emerald to be just above the top of the head. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate that. I'm going to bring this one up right about there. I'm going to leave that stone there. We're going to use this purple one as a sacrificial cutout. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down with that selected and grab the head, apply the difference, and now you can see we have a cutout in our head. I'm going to take this stone, I'm going to hit Shift S, I'm going to move this back to the cursor, or the center 3D cursor, and then we'll hide that again. So now it is hidden. Okay guys, so now I have to add in my 4 prongs. Now this is a pretty simple process. I'm going to add in a cube. So Mesh, Add Cube. I'm going to size that down to about here. Size it along the Z-axis to about like that. Okay, that gives me about what I'm looking for. And now what I want to do is bevel the edges on all 4 sides of this. So I'm going to hit the Tab key to go into Edit Mode. And I'm going to, with that object selected, I'm going to hit Control R. I'm going to add in a bunch of loop cuts to that. Press the left mouse button twice. That makes it permanent. And now we have a bunch of loop cuts within our model. Now I also want to round this off just a little bit because we don't want this necessarily flat, but we only want to bevel 2 sides. So with the edge selected here, I'm going to grab my edge tool. I'm going to grab this particular edge, hold the Alt key down, go down to the bottom edge of our cube, and that selects that entire piece. Now I'm going to go grab this particular one. And now you can see using the Shift key, I was able to get both of those. Hit Control B to bevel those edges. I'm going to bring that out and just keep that a little bit rounded. That looks good so far. And now what I want to do is go into Object Mode and make this just slightly narrower along the Y-axis. So I'll hit S, Y, and then bring it down to about like so. Okay, that's pretty good. And all I have to do now is bend over the top. To do this, remember the bend tool. If you haven't seen any of my videos, I think I showed it to you about a year ago, but I'll show you again how to use the bend tool. I'm going to move this down so that our 3D cursor is right about the upper third of our prong. Okay, I'm going to go into Edit Mode. I'm going to select A to select all vertices. I'm going to come in from the side view, and with the Shift W command, now I can bend over the top. So I'm just going to bend that over. Just about like so. That gives me a bent prong that now I can add to my head and kind of seat the stone within that. Okay, so let's do this. We've got 1 prong, but we need 4. I'm going to make this also a little narrower along the x-axis, SX, and we'll make that just a little bit narrower, just about like so. That looks good. That should fit appropriately in the head. I'm going to rotate this RX, and I'm going to bend this down to about here, like so. And if we need to make any more adjustments to that after we bend it, we can do that later. I'm going to press Control R and Control A to apply the rotation and scale. Now with our prong selected, I'm going to come over to our modifiers tab. I'm going to add in a mirror modifier and select both X and Y axes. Now, if I just do this, you can see it takes both our prongs. I'm going to hit Control Z and cancel that. And if I hit Tab to go into edit mode, make sure that all your vertices and faces are selected. Now if I do that, it mirrors it along the appropriate axis. So I'm going to move that to about here. And I'm also going to move it along the x-axis. And so far so good. Now we need to rotate that along the z-axis. Now I'm only modifying the one that's highlighted. I'm going to zoom in here, hit RZ, and then rotate that just about like so. And make that kind of nice and flat. From the top, I can go in there and tweak the settings a little bit. So if I hit G, I can kind of move that where I want it. Just about like so. And then also rotate that along the z-axis to get it much more straighter, like this. And that's the look I'm going for. And 7, we're going to move that down just a little bit, about like that. Okay, now if we bring back our stone, I'm going to go back into object mode. I'll bring back our stone. And you see our stone sits pretty good within the prongs. And I've modeled these prongs so that I can bend them over the corners of the emerald cut stone. Let's hide our gemstone one more time. I'm going to hide all the gemstones. Okay, so now that we have the prongs set where we want them, now we have to join these two together so that they're one piece. So with the prongs selected, again, you don't have to apply the modifier. It'll get applied when we go and add the union tool. So I'm going to hold the shift key down, select the head so that both objects are selected. Come over to our Boolean tool and then select union. Now that makes one piece. That is our head. So we have emerald head all set. So there's our head. We're going to take that and we are going to hide our head because we don't need that. And the next thing we're going to do is model both the ring shank and the upper gallery, the upper frame for this ring shank. So I'm going to take this circle, which we know is the right finger size that we're going to use. I'm going to come over to the curve geometry section and I'm going to extrude it. So I'm going to make that a little bit wider, just like so. And if I come over and I activate my items tab here, I can see just how wide I'm making that. So I want to make that pretty wide. I want that to be about 3.5 millimeters at the top. So I'm going to keep the extrusion going until we get to about 3.5 millimeters. And that looks good, right about there. Okay. So with that done now, I need to add in some kind of thickness to this ring. So if we look at this from the side view, you can see it's not showing up, but we'll just leave it like that. I'm going to add in a new modifier to this. We'll use the solidify modifier. Okay. Now, if I come over to side view and I use the solidify modifier thickness section, I can bring this into the negative numbers and you can see it extrudes outward to give us some kind of depth. Okay, so now how do I determine how big this is? Well, each one of these little squares right here is 1 millimeter, so that's about 1 millimeter thick. I'm going to make that just a little bit thicker, about 1.5 millimeters, right about like that. I'm also going to come back to my curve geometry. I'm going to increase this to 24. And that looks good so far. Now you'll notice that this is shaded smooth. I'm going to right click on this and come down to shade flat, just so that I can see the actual dimensions of that. I like the way that looks right now. And that gives us an idea of how far our upper frame or upper gallery is going to have to be, because we want this ring shank to be about the same size all the way around. We just want it to be rounded. So to do that, we're going to follow the next step, which is to add in another modifier to this particular piece. Let's go back to the modifiers tab. I'm going to minimize the solidify modifier, and we're going to add in a new subdivision surface. So you can see what it does to our model. Kind of shrinks it down a little bit. I'm going to increase that to 3 subdivisions for the render and the viewport, and that looks good to me. It gives me a nice round base to that. And I'm going to leave that just like that. And now I'm going to work on this upper gallery or upper shank. Okay, so that our ring shank is done now, we need to work on our upper frame. So with our upper frame selected, I'm going to hit Control A and apply all transformations. Now there's a reason I'm doing that with this particular piece is because I can't bend this piece. I can't go into edit mode and move it left or right and get a nice perfect mesh or texture out of it. So with that done now, I can come over to our curve properties and I'm going to add in, instead of an extrusion, we're going to come down to depth and I'm going to give this some depth just like so. I'm also going to increase the resolution preview to 24. Okay, and now if I look at this as an item, we have no depth here, so I can't tell you how wide it is. I can only look at this from the side and say that each one of these squares being a millimeter, this is just about a millimeter and a half, which isn't bad. I want to make that a little bit bigger, so again from the side view, I'll come down to the depth, and I will increase that number just a little bit, just about like so. Now let's bring in our head. We're going to unhide our head. We're going to unhide our emerald. So those two should be in view. I'm going to come over and make sure that we're in object mode. Select the head. Select, holding the shift key, the stone together. So you have both of those items selected and bring those up to about here. Now what I'm trying to do is get this bottom cutlet of our gemstone over the top of our shank. So I'm going to just drag that to about here so there's some distance between the cutlet and the ring shank. Okay, that's about where I want it. Now I can start playing with this particular curve. I'm going to hit the tab key and I'm going to move that over just about like so. And I might bring that up a little bit to get that in there in the frame, and that looks pretty steady to me. I like the way that's kind of going around our model. Let's go back into object mode so we can see what that looks like. That looks good. That's the look I'm going for. Okay, now I need to duplicate this on both sides, but before I do that, let's take a look at this from the side. You can see we have this weird bend to our frame. Now that's okay, we're going to actually cut some of that off, but I do want to fix that. So from the side, if I go into edit mode, now I have this point here, but I want to select this particular point. And actually, let's grab this point here on this angle, and I'm going to move that so this is straight up and down, just about like so. Okay, now let's grab this particular point, and now I want to grab the lower section right here. And again, we're going to bring that line so it's straight up and down. So you can see how I made this particular line completely vertical. I'll go back into object mode. That looks good to me. I'm happy with the way that is modeled in that particular piece. I'm going to select this petite piece. I'm going to hit S, Y, and just make this a little bit wider, just about like so. Okay, I like that. Now let's go back to this particular upper frame. With that upper frame selected, now I'm going to apply a mirror modifier along the Y-axis so that it duplicates that particular piece. So I'll come to the modifiers tab, add in a mirror modifier along Y, not X. Make sure you only have Y selected. And there we have both upper frames to this particular piece. That's the look I'm going for. And so far my ring is looking pretty good. The next thing I want to do is bring in my Marquis diamonds. So I'm going to come over to here where we have the Marquis. I'm going to unhide that Marquis. There's the Marquis. It's right in the middle. We zoom in here. I'm going to rotate that along the X or the Z axis, RZ90, to give it a 90-degree turn. I'm going to press Control A just to align the rotation and scale. And now I'm going to bring that up to about here. And if I look at this from the side, we want to get this over to about here. I'm going to bring this down right like that. We're going to add in a modifier for that particular diamond. I'm going to use the mirror modifier one more time. I'm going to align, or I'm going to activate both the X and Y axis on the mirror modifier. Hit the tab key, hit A to select all, so that my diamond is completely selected. It's hard to see there, but if we look through it, you can see it is selected. And I'm going to drag that over. And then I'm going to drag it here, just like so. And you can see now I have 4 Marquis diamonds, which is what I'm going for with my particular model. Now, I need to rotate these. And I don't necessarily want to rotate these along the global axis. So to avoid that, I'm going to come over and I'm going to use normal. So I'm going to change my 3D arrows so that they face the normals of the particular piece I'm working with. You'll see why I'm going to do that in a second. Now, if I hit R and then Y, I can rotate this along the Y axis. Okay? And if you look closely, the axes to my model have not changed. So I can still rotate these. If I hit RX, I get a good rotation there. But if I come back to global, it's going to throw me off when I get to the Z. So I'm going to bring this over this way here. Bring that into where about where I want it. I'm going to hit RY just a little bit more to get that along the right angle. I'm going to bring this down and out just a little bit right there. I'm going to hit RZ and I'm going to rotate that so it's like this. And now the position of my diamonds looks much better. So I've got those exactly where I want them, and that's what I'm going to do is just leave them there. Okay. My marquees are in place. The next thing I need to do is get the center pieces for the 6 diamonds on either side that we're going to use. Now, for me in particular, I can come over to my tools. I can use my leaf models in Blender Gems. If you want to get Blender Gems, it's on my website. And I can just select the leaf model I want, which is this particular version, and append it. And there it is. I can just grab that model and just use it any way I want to. However, if you don't have Blender Gems, you need to model this. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Let's delete that particular piece. And let's hide all our gems and our ring parts. Okay. To model that particular piece is very simple. So I'm going to look down from the top view. I'm going to hit 7 on my numeric keyboard, come to the center. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add in a curve and a circle. Okay. Now let's bring in our round diamonds because we may want to see those and how well where we size those. So here's our diamond. We know our diamond's about 1.2 millimeters. We know we want 2 diamonds here. So if I hit Shift D and then Enter, I can move 1 diamond above the other. And I'm going to give myself just a little space in the middle, just about like so. And now I want this particular circle to be a little bit larger. So I'm going to hit S and then size that up so that it's over the peak of the diamonds. I'm also going to size it along the X-axis, SX, and bring that in. But it's not marquee shaped, and what I'm trying to do is follow the same marquee shape as we have in those 4 diamonds we just added. So I'm going to hit the Tab key to go into edit mode. I'm going to select this upper frame here and hit S and then X, and you can see I can make a point just like so. And I'll do the same down here, SX, SX, grab that, SX, and then bring that point in. Hit the Tab key. I'm going to size this up just a little bit more, about like so. SX, and then I'll bring it in just a little bit so it's a little narrower. Okay, now I need to add in an extrusion to this. So I'm going to come over to that curve properties, and I'm going to extrude this up and down just like so. And when I get it to about the thickness that I want, which would be right about like that, that looks good. I'm going to convert this to a mesh right now. So I'll right click my mouse on it, come down to convert to mesh. Now that I'm in edit mode, you can see I have all my faces and models there. So I'm going to select my edge loop here. I'm going to hit the Shift Alt key and select the top frame or the top ring. And also I'm going to hold the Shift key and Alt key together and select the bottom. Then I'll press F to get my faces modeled onto those. And with those 2 faces selected, I'll come to my face tool and then poke faces. The reason you want to poke the faces is because we will be applying a Boolean to these, and we want the model to work perfectly. Now I'll go into object mode. I'm going to select that new object. I am going to shade flat. With that done, now I can add in my 2 prongs on each of these diamonds. So I'm going to select both diamonds by holding the shift key, selecting each of them. I'll come over to Jewelcraft, which is right here, and hit prongs. And now I can rotate these prongs till I get them about where I want them, which is about like so. Now they're kind of big, and I don't want them that big. We're going to size these down under diameter. I'm going to bring those down to about 0.35, just like so. And now they're a little bit long, so let's shorten these up. The top will come down, and we'll bring in the bottom so that it's not interfering with that. That looks good. I'm going to click on the new head, hold the shift key down, click on the prongs so that all 3 objects are selected. We'll go to our Boolean tool and then do a union. Now we have one item. It's almost done. Now we have to do one more circle, so I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add in another curve and then circle. I'm going to size this up, so we'll look at the top. Yes, we're going to size it up like that. I am going to go into Edit mode, hit SX, and then bring these in. Let's hit all SX, and then bring that in like so. I will grab this particular side here, hit S, and make that a Marquis shape on the bottom. And again, we'll do that on the top just like we did before. Okay. Now, why am I doing that? I'll explain to you in a second. I need to get some filigree work along this. And instead of using a beveled edge around this and then using a filigree tool, I can model it right into Blender. So to do that, I'm going to go back into object mode, hit Shift A. We're going to add in a new model or a new mesh, and it'll be a sphere. So I'm going to add a UV sphere. I'm going to leave it just the way it is. I'm going to size that down to a very tiny size, about like so. Let's make that a little bit bigger, about like that. With that done, I'm going to hold that. I'm going to select our curve, holding the shift key down, select the curve, just like so. And now I can come over to Jewelcraft and hit Distribute on Curve. And I'm going to look at this from the top down. So there is our 2-stone setting, and I'm going to increase the number of UV spheres until I get them to about touch each other. And I have one at the top and one at the bottom, just like so. Okay, now if I look at this from the side, we have a little bit of an edge over that, but that'll work okay. I'm going to drop this whole curve down just a little bit like so. And that gives us a nice decorative filigreed edge. With all of those selected, I'm going to hold the shift key down, select my new head that we just made, and I'm going to come over to Boolean and then do a union. That'll make one piece with the filigree and the prongs all set. Might take your computer a moment to calculate all those added pieces. And if you get it all done like that and it works, we go into object mode, you can see it is all one object. And hit the tab key one more time to go back into object mode. I'm going to grab this particular diamond, hold the shift key down, grab the second diamond, and now I'm going to use the Jewelcraft tool, and I'm going to use the cutter option. That adds cutters to our model. I'm going to select this particular cutter, hold the shift key down and select the other cutter, and then I will while holding the shift key down, select our model, go back to Boolean, and now do a difference. And there you can see, if I take these 2 diamonds and we hide them, our model is complete. We can get rid of this extra curve, so I'll get rid of that now. And we have the head that we're going to use. I may make that a little bit taller, so with that selected, hit SZ and just make it a little bit thicker. We don't have to worry about too much right now, but that looks good. Okay, so with that selected, I'm going to rotate that RZ90 and rotate that. I'm going to also do this. I'm going to hit the Set Origin Center of Mass, hit Shift S, and then put that right in the middle of the screen. press Control A and align the rotation and scale. Pretty simple. Once you get used to all these little commands, you'll just do them. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did. We are going to bring that up to here. And I am going to add in one more circle. And the reason I'm going to add in a circle is because I want 3 of these along either side. And there's a really quick way to do that. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add in a circle, just like so. I'm going to hit R, X, and 90. So we rotate that along the X-axis. And I'm going to hit Size Up, and we're going to bring that up. And what I want it to do is, let's see if we do this. We'll turn on invisible mode. I want this to be SX a little wider so that it comes through about the middle of our frame here. I can move that up just about like so, and then tapers down into the pit of our ring. So I'm going to hit SX just to make that a little bit wider. S, bring that down to about here. SX, just about like so. Okay, so I'm going to select my model. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, select that new curve, and then do the Jewel Craft Distribute on Curve. And let's make that 0. And we're actually going to make that 180 degrees. Okay. Now you can see they're not in the proper place, so we have to adjust the start and stop position. And I'm just going to bring that over here to about like that. And then the stop position or end position I can bring up. Let's bring that into view a little bit more so that it is right about here. Now I need to make these a little smaller, so let's come over to size and let's just size these down until we get it to look about how we really want it. Just going to move that in right about like that. Let's size this down a little bit more. Start position, end position. That looks about how I want it to look. Okay, so now that I've got that done, I can take this particular object here, hold the Shift key down, select the other 2, and now I'm going to use the object properties in Jewel Craft, and I'm going to mirror that along the X-axis. And there you see it puts the other ones right on the other side. Now, before we finish anything, there's a few more things we have to do, and I need to change this frame here. I also need to make all of these meshes actually meshes because a couple of them are curves. This is still a curve and our ring shank is still a curve. So what I'm going to do now is start with my ring shank. I'm going to right click on that, come down to make or convert to mesh. And now we've converted that to a mesh. If I look at this from the side view, I go into edit mode. There's one more step I have to take, and it's this particular line here. I zoomed right into it. And if you remember, I've used the proportional editing tool to make my ring shanks a little narrower on the bottom, and that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to hold the Shift and Alt key together, and I'm going to grab this particular loop all the way around that ring. I'm going to zoom out here, about like so, and I'm going to turn on my proportional editing right here. With proportional editing, I can move my cursor back in the middle, and I can Y, so we're only going to size this along the Y-axis, and now I can adjust my circle of influence, and as I move my cursor in and out, I can make this much narrower, and the more I move my circle of influence outward, the more influence it has on the entire ring. So I'm going to bring that down to about here, and you can see we get a nice taper along the entire ring now. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to go back into object mode. So we know this particular piece is a mesh, but this piece here is still on a curved object. So now I'm going to modify that and make that a curve. So with that selected, I'm going to right click on it, convert to a mesh. It applies the modifier, so we have no more modifiers to deal with. And I need to blend that into this particular ring. To make this particular cut now, I'm going to move our ring shank over just a little bit, go back from the side view, and you can see I want to make a cut somewhere around here at an angle. So to do that, it's not that difficult. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add in a mesh and a cylinder. I'm going to rotate this RX90 so that it's a circle this way. I'm going to hit S, and I'm going to size this up to about like that. I'm going to bring this down ever so slightly. I'm going to grab our ring shank, hit Shift S, and move that back into the center. And take our cylinder now from the top view, or from the side view rather, and just bring it out SX, something similar to that. Now with that done, I want to use this as a cutter to cut through our upper frame or upper gallery. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down. I'm going to grab this particular piece here. Both of those are selected. I'll grab our Boolean tool and then do difference. And if your model disappears like that, we need to make an extra step. So let's do Command Z or Control Z and cancel that particular item. Let's grab this particular frame and let's add a new modifier to this. We're going to add in a subdivision surface modifier. I'm going to change that to 3. I'm going to hit the apply button. So now I've applied that. Now if you look at our model now, it's much more defined. Let's go back into object mode. Okay, so if for some reason your upper frame disappears, there's one step that you need to take, and I don't often have to do this, but occasionally I do. If you take your model and apply a remesh modifier to it, just come over here and apply a refresh modifier to it. You can use voxel on a curved surface, but if it's a squared off surface, you're going to want to use sharp and then increase this to about probably 6 or 8. I'm going to leave it on voxel, and then you're going to apply that. I've already done this, so I'm going to cancel that. Once you've remeshed this, if you look at your particular model, you'll see it has like little squares in it. It's not going to come out in a 3D print or in your ring design. It's going to look just a little funny in Blender, but don't worry about that. When we shade it, it's going to look fine. Okay, so now I can come back. I can select our cutout tool. With our cutout tool selected, hold the Shift key down, select our upper shank, and now do a difference Boolean modifier to that. And now you see that the upper frame is blended into the ring shank without any extra pieces to it. And the only thing I have to do now is just make all of these pieces one model. Before we do that, I want to unhide our diamonds. And if I have the Marquis diamonds somewhere here, right there. Okay, so I've got these 4 Marquis diamonds. Remember, they have the modifier done to them, and it hasn't been applied. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply that modifier. So now this is basically one piece. If I grab that Marquis, I can just kind of move it anywhere I want. So what I'm going to do now is hit the Shift D. I'm going to duplicate these. Press Enter, and now I have a duplication of those. With those selected, I'm going to hold the Shift key down, select our upper shank, and now I'm going to apply a Boolean difference to that. Now here's why I did that, because it makes our cutout for our Marquis stones. Okay, following me so far? Let's hit Shift Command Z to put those diamonds back. Now there's one more cool feature that I like to do with the prongs, and that is this. I have to add 2 prongs to each of these, and I can't use the Jewel Craft tool to do that. No worries. This is pretty simple. I am going to add in a new piece. So we're going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add in a cylinder, so mesh and then cylinder. I'm going to bring this up to about here, just so we can play with it up here. I'm going to size that down. I'm going to come in a little bit so we got a good view of this. I'm going to select the sphere, go into edit mode. With the face tool selected, I'm going to grab the upper face. I'm going to press Control B and move my mouse out. And I'm going to give that a nice curve, just like so. So it makes the appearance of a rounded prong. Okay, let's hit the Tab key. Now this is going to be pretty fun to do. I am going to take this particular piece. I'm going to come over to use my magnetic tool right here. And under that magnetic tool, once you turn it on, we're going to add in a couple things here. We're going to come down to face. I'm going to do center, activate that. I'm going to hit a little check mark here and align rotation to target. And from there, I can grab this piece, just like so with the G key, and move this anywhere I want. And you can see it just kind of aims it in the direction I want it. And I'm going to put it right over that corner of that Marquis diamond there. And I probably want this to be a little bit offset, so G, and I'm going to move that over here, just like so. And right like that. That's okay right there. Okay. Let's move it down just a little bit. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate that, and then G. And then I'm going to move that over to here, just like so. Okay, so far so good. Now I've got to do that 6 more times. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to hit Shift D and then G. I'm going to move that over here. Now you could probably apply a mirror modifier to these and put them wherever you want, but it's just quicker for me to do this. Shift D, then G, and then move it over here. Shift D, then G, and then we'll go over to the other side. Right over here. Shift D, G, and then I'll move it over there. Shift D, G, we'll come over here. Shift D, G, and then right there. Okay, so I've got the 2 prongs on each of my Marquis diamonds. Let's start blending this whole thing together. I can take my head, I'm going to move that up just a little bit more, just so it's a little pronounced on that. I'm going to take and grab that that head, hold the Shift key down, grab the upper frame, and then I'm going to do a union to that. So I'm joining those 2 pieces together. And I'm just going to, with each of these selected, hold the Shift key down, grab a prong, grab another prong. I'll grab this prong here and that prong there. We'll do another union. Okay, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. Shift and then grab each of these. And then do another union. With this upper frame selected, I'll hold the Shift key down and select each of these 3 heads here, and then union those. And the reason I'm doing this step by step is in case I have a failure, I can go back and fix it. And right here you can see I had a failure, so I'm going to hit Control Z. Let's grab this piece and this piece, just those 2, and do a union. And then this piece here, I'll do a union. And those are good. Now I'll grab the upper frame and do a union. That worked. So I'm going to do the same here. Grab these 3 pieces and do a union. And then I'll grab the ring shank, or the upper part of the ring shank, and hit union. Okay, so the upper part is all one piece. And now if you want to make any changes to this section of your ring shank, you can do this now. I'm going to turn off my magnetic tool. I don't need that. I'm going to come into edit mode here from the side, and I'm just going to make this particular part of the ring a little wider. Shift Alt, grab that. Oops, let's make sure we've got our edge tool selected. Shift Alt, and we'll grab this whole loop all the way around the shank. With the proportional editing tool selected, I'm going to hit S, Y, and just make that just a little bit wider on the top. And remember, you can adjust the circle of influence however you want it to be. And I just want it to be a little bit wider. Just like that. I press Tab key, go back into object mode. Now with that done, I'm going to hold the Shift key down and grab this upper frame and apply a union to that. And now every bit of our ring should be one particular piece, and you can see it is. The next thing I'll do is unhide our emerald. And there's our gemstone. Go back into object mode. And I'm not going to bother to place these little stones. You can move them around either with the circle, or you can just manually place them. But this is how I designed the particular ring, and the way it looks is pretty good. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I hope this helped you with some tools and tips with working with Blender to design some jewelry, and if it did, please give it a thumbs up. I apologize for the length of the video, but to do something like this does take about an hour. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.